First, I just want to thank all of you all for agreeing to serve and coming here today for this kickoff meeting. And also, I want to just thank each and every one of you for agreeing to hold up on any substantial business or substantive business until the city of St. Louis has an opportunity to make their selections and seat all of their freeholders. And I do believe that we will be able to get that done in fairly short order, which will allow you to continue doing your business, but to commit to this for a year-long process, and a process that obviously across time, at times, is gonna be contentious. I don't think it'll all be good times, but it's worthwhile work. So on behalf of the Board of Aldermen and people who aren't here to thank you personally, I want to thank you for agreeing to do that. We do have a few members of the board that are coming today to just give you some of their thoughts about what they would like to see throughout the process. We have with us also the mayor of the city of St. Louis, and a few other electeds that may show up here before we wrap up today. But before I officially turn it over to you, I'm going to ask that the clerk of the Board of Aldermen just come up or just take a mic out there, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk, could you grab one of those just right here, or right here in the center would be good. Feels good telling former Alderman Terry Kennedy what to do. See, he used to be, he's the guy that trained us all on this floor when I first came to the board. But if you would want to just greet the freeholders and give them a brief history of this Board of Aldermen before we move on, and then I'll recognize the mayor, and then we'll turn it over to the freeholders.
Surely. First, welcome to the city hall. It is my pleasure. I've seen most of you. I was at the front when you came in, so that you can put a face with the individuals of this city. Yes, I was an alderman. I was first elected in 1989. I was 2 years old. I was very mature for my age, and stopped being an alderman in April of this year. I'm presently the clerk of the board. They decided out of their wisdom to keep me here because I was out of here. However, the city of St. Louis has a very rich, as you know, and diverse history. Its first European settlers came into this area around 1672. That included a Jesuit priest and Joliet, who most are familiar with Joliet, Illinois, who came into this area. Much later did you get Pierre Leclerc and Augustus Choteau. Its history is very much influenced by that of world history. Oftentimes you don't hear about this area because the United States is measured by its English colonies and not by those areas that were colonized by the French or the Spanish. So you hear of the 13 colonies, but you don't hear of the history of this area as much. As you know, this was a French territory. Then later the Spanish took it, then later the French took it back. But there was a significant instance that happened in history that forced Napoleon to ultimately sell this area to the United States. And that was their struggle they were having with Haiti. The Haitian Revolution, as you know, began around 1791 and ended in 1804. That put such a strain on Napoleon's effort to create a new empire that he could no longer manage and maintain this area and decided to sell it to the United States. The Haitian Revolution had a direct impact upon the city of St. Louis becoming a part of the United States. Long before the French colonists came here, they have documented the native people of this land living in this area, some 40,000 that they consider to be a part of the Mississippian culture. This was the largest enclave of Native Americans outside of Mexico. There was no enclave of Native Americans as large as this area right here. They're not absolutely sure of the name. Most just call them the Cahokia, but they do recognize the significance of these individuals and what they did. They created an area ready for others to come into. Much later, because the artifacts show that they were here in this area some 1200 BC. They did not reach that height of that 40,000 to around 1100 AD, but it was an area of large enclaves of native people. Then later the French, then the Spanish. There were Africans that were brought here as a part of the transatlantic slave trade by the French. The largest grouping came here in 1720 by a man by the name of Francis Renault. He brought 500 Africans from Santo Domingo, which was Haiti, up into this area to work in the DeSoto mines, and then later they migrated into St. Louis as a part of the slave trade. Many of those families are still here. In fact, on my mother's side, we are one of those descendants that were brought here in 1720 to work in the coal mines of DeSoto. Yeah, that's a good, you look at me, I'm still alive. It is an important thing for us to understand the history. This city hall, as I mentioned to some of you, was designed after the City Hall of Paris. At that time, St. Louis had a two-tier government. You had what was called a House of Delegates, and then you had what you call the City Council. It was much like the federal government of the United States. You had a House and a Senate. The other body held was in the Kennedy Room presently, which is across the hall from here, which is another very ornate room that tells a history. Later, after there was a big German influx after the sale of this land in 1803 to the United States, and the Germans kind of struggled with the French till ultimately they changed the government to what you presently have now is a Board of Aldermen. That is a German-based word that means elder man. They did not have in mind women being a part of this body. So much so that their architecture actually reflected that. There were no toilets made for women as a part of the Board of Aldermen, only a men's toilet. They're now finally renovating one so the women do not have to run to the men's toilet and lock the door. But culture and history affects architecture, it affects your attitudes, it reflects our understanding, it reflects in everything that we do. And so the president wanted us to share a little of the history of the city of St. Louis in very broad strokes. So they will recognize the diversity of this area, African American, Native American, Spanish, French, and then later the English and the Germans and the Irish and all others. If we work very hard and recognize this great diversity, we can make this a very rich and beautiful place in which to live because we have all of those heritage a part of here. And so it is, again, my pleasure. They oftentimes say I'm one of the oldest here. That's not by age. That's supposed to be by seniority, but it is certainly my pleasure to welcome you here to your first meeting as the state constitution says here in the chambers. It was our intent to make you feel welcomed. There are refreshments in the other room, and our president will take you from here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all. Madam Mayor.
There we go. Thank you all for being here today. It's my pleasure to welcome you here to City Hall, as is called for, as you know, in the state constitution. Of course, I think this is a historic day. The Board of Freeholders has met several times over the last 120, 30 years, but for our generation, this is a historic day that this is the first meeting of the Board of Freeholders. As you know, the state constitution has required that the mayor and the county executive nominate 9 individuals to serve on the Board of Freeholders, and the governor should nominate 1. On September the 23rd, I nominated the 9 members. The Board of Aldermen at this point has not approved those members. We are trying to work that out. We thought we might have a vote last Friday, but that motion was denied by the president. And so we're still trying to work that out. I appreciate the tack that you've taken, which is not to do substantive business until you have the 9 members of the city of St. Louis. And I would say that I certainly hope that that will be very soon. I would hope that the Board of Aldermen will take this up on this Friday, which is their next meeting. Of course, there's a committee meeting, I believe, that has to happen in advance of that. So at any rate, I want to thank you for serving. I want to say this is a historic day. Sometimes we tend not to stop and reflect on what that might mean for the future of our region. You have a lot of power. You have a lot of leeway for what you might propose to the voters of both the city and the county. I know that you are all highly qualified and that you'll take that very seriously, as will the appointees when they get here from the city of St. Louis. So thank you for serving. This is a big time commitment and a serious commitment, and I think that we will all be better off for your efforts. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the Board of Freeholders to continue the meeting. As I stated earlier, I've been in conversations with the county executive, and he thought it would be a good idea today, along with myself, to hear from the various different members of the Board of Aldermen. Some of them are in the chambers today, some of them are here along the wall, and some of them are at their desk, about the things that are, important to them. I certainly hope that we will get to a resolution this week. What the committee members have been stressing to the mayor is the importance of having representation from throughout the city of St. Louis, particularly in some of their neighborhoods, some of the neighborhoods and communities, particularly north of Del Mar, that have been cut out of the picture for far too long. We know that Better Together failed largely because people did not feel they had a voice. They didn't feel they had a seat at the table or an opportunity to see what is important to them expressed through the process. So the board has been working to get there with the mayor, and I think that we're very close. And I have hopes that we will have our members seated by this Friday so that we can continue to process and engage with all of you. Again, thank you so much for taking the position of holding off on any substantive work. With that, as discussed earlier, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Blanner, the governor's appointee, for you guys to move forward with your business.
If it's okay with the other members, I'd like to hear from the aldermen and alderwomen as to your perspective on this process, and if you have any insights that you'd like to share with us, that would be wonderful.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Tyus. I am the Alderwoman of the 1st Ward. I used to be the Alderwoman of the 20th Ward before I was gerrymandered. I came back here a few years ago because my community wanted me to represent them. I am the chair of the Rules Committee. I am also the vice chair of the Intergovernmental Affairs, where the mayor's nominees sit. My first question I have is always, I'm a rules person. I have not been able to find out where this meeting was noticed up. Where was this meeting noticed up? Because per the Sunshine Rules, we're not supposed to have a meeting without noticing up the meeting 24 hours. So I want to know.
Yeah, the meeting was noticed up, as discussed. We can discuss
but the clerk told me he didn't do it. Okay, so that's why I want to know where they did it, because it wouldn't have been his responsibility.
Can we, Alderwoman, this is an organizational meeting. No business is going to take place here today. This is a meeting largely to give an opportunity for you all to talk to the current freeholders. They will officially kick off their meetings after we make our appointments, which hopefully is this Friday. So,
Mr. President, I'm very good with the rules. You interrupted me. I had the floor, and you know I'm very good with the rules. So please let me finish, okay? I appreciate it. I'm not going to grill them like I would you. I'm going to be very nice and put my company manners on, but I am going to finish what I'm going to say, okay? And so I have the floor. They recognize me. Please, I don't think that I'm out of order. There are a couple of lawyers on here on this board, and I am an attorney myself, and so I'm used to pushing back. The reason why I asked that question was because I was under the understanding that you were going to elect officers today. So if you're not going to do that, I'm not going to file a grievance, although the reason why I do that is because some people who very much believe in the Sunshine Rule approached me about, well, we can't find it. Where is it? Can we come? So I just want to caution you all to please notice up meetings, okay? And it's not really our clerk or the people in the county's responsibility. That would be your responsibility to make sure that it's noticed up. So that's always, I'm always the rules person here. And I just want to make a couple other corrections. The governor didn't have a nominee. The governor had an appointment. Doesn't have to go through the legislative body. That is very different. That is a different process. So people want to wonder why we do not have the people appointed from the city. It is because we have a seven-member committee that's made up of 5 people who live north of Page. That is the heart of North St. Louis. I have represented North St. Louis longer than anyone that is sitting at the board, even with me being gone 10 years and coming back. I am an advocate for North St. Louis. If you know Matthew Dickey, that's who I represent, that whole part of Kings Highway that has the median. My husband and I are not lower income, we are upper income. We make significant more than many people in North St. Louis. We chose to live in North St. Louis because we think that people, my husband comes from the neighborhood that we live in, and we think that people with education has to stay there and advocate, and we don't like that whole narrative that's out in the community, and neither does my community, about all the poor little black people in North St. Louis. It is something that offends us, and when I ran in 1991, I ran on that there was a middle and upper income black people that lives here. And that we need to be heard. Not that the other people didn't, but that don't destroy our neighborhoods. Pretty much that's what redistricting and gerrymandering did. We were very successful, highest voting ward, Democratic ward in the city. We brought in everybody from Bill Clinton to everybody else got the most votes from us. So gerrymandering was a very ugly thing that tore up our community. I came back here to perpetuate that, to continue the conversation about, hey, North St. Louis is not some little community that's begging, okay? That we are vibrant people made up of all kind of different people. In fact, I want to just tell you, every black person who lives on Lindo, almost every one of them came from my ward. You will know the names, the Robin Smiths, the Wayman Smiths, Carl Grice. They all came from the ward that was the upper middle class black ward before there was integration. So we resent the indication that we shouldn't be represented, and we've made that known. We didn't try to have a conversation in the press. We let the mayor know, because she used to be a member, that we were not happy. 5 members on our committee live north of Page. When you tell us we only get one member, that's not going to be okay with us. That is not inclusion. That is the same thing that happened down at the Arch. So white people sometimes think, well, we put some black people there. You pick black people who you want to have. It's like having a person who is anti-choice and then putting them on the abortion clinics boards, okay? So that is not okay with us. So this was not something that we took lightly. It's not something that we wanted to be out in the open fighting. In fact, the press will tell you that we kept it to ourselves. I heard one of your members say it doesn't matter where you live. It does. I actually am not from St. Louis. I grew up in Central Illinois. I lived 2 years in the Central Quarter, right around the corner from the mayor. I lived 7 years in South St. Louis when I was going to WashU School of Law, and I've lived 32 years in my house in North St. Louis. Absolutely. So I've lived all up and down Kings Highway. It absolutely does make a difference, and it makes a difference when you're making a consideration about that we are made up of wards, and we're concerned about having effective representation that reflects the things from my community. And I want to give you a little anecdote of how much it makes a difference. When they gerrymandered my ward, I had a corner that had the 4th ward one corner, the 18th ward another corner, and the 1st ward another corner. Those three people lived right across the street from each other. None of them could run for office in the other wards, and they lived right across the street from each other. So where you live makes a difference. So we want to be included, and inclusion does not mean people agree with you. Inclusion means that people might come and bring a very different perspective. And in my years of being on the board, almost 20 now, I would have had 30 now, is that I have found that if people actually listened, they got a very different perspective than if they don't listen, okay? I'm an advocate. We have alderwomen here now because when I got elected, they only called women aldermen. I absolutely rejected that. I got the rules changed because that was important to me. We have now half of the board is women. I'm proud of that. When you're making your decisions, the other thing is that black people are the majority of the city. You're representative right now, look at you, you're representative of what the county looks like. But the nominees don't represent a majority African population in the city. We are the majority. We also hold most of the majority of the citywide elected officials. Almost all of them I have helped. I came back here, I've put myself in the background to help other people because African Americans can lead. A lot of what African Americans feel, what I hear in my community, is that there is this great push to merge the city with the county because they want to get rid of black elected officials. And so they are adamantly opposed to it. North County also has some concerns that I want you to know about. I've been talking to, I know the people in North County that, because I've been around here longer than most elected officials. It is a concern that you not think that it's okay to just put everything together in one big pot and say this is the county now, and not recognize that black people, there's never been an African-American governor or any statewide elected official in the state of Missouri. So the most that we can get to is the mayors and the local elected officials here. We don't get to be state senator, state rep, but we don't get to be statewide. That has not happened in Missouri. I grew up in Illinois, where right now they got 3 statewide elected officials. So it's very different when I deal with this politics from where I grew up. So we do not want us to be thought of as monolithic in North St. Louis. We are a diverse group of people, but we do want to be thought of as being included. We want our board to be reflective, just like the county's board. You're a majority Caucasian in the county, and it reflects that. But that is not what it reflects in the city with the mayor's nominees, and it does not reflect a fairness about people being included in different parts. I talked to my counterparts out in the county because I know them, and they told me that Sam Page worked with the elected officials out there and tried to make sure that at least one was from each district. That makes sense to me. Now, we have 28 wards, but you could have did one from these 3, another from these 3. There was a way to do it. So I don't want you to think that we don't want to be in the process. We actually want to be part of the process. I was here before the mayor. I was here before the comptroller. I was here before the president of the Board of Aldermen. And I'm the only person in history that got gerrymandered and came back here to fight for my community. And so I'm here to implore you to be inclusive. Don't just have meetings in certain parts. I know this first meeting was supposed to be at the board, but here are different people. Don't let people who can't represent me and don't live in my community speak for me, because they don't. And that's what I told the mayor's nominees. You can't speak for me because you lived here 25 years ago. I lived in Decatur, Illinois 20 years ago, but I can't speak for Decatur, Illinois. Now, I've been gone since 1974. So some of you I know personally, I've had conversations with, I've had dealings. I look at Mr. Nations. I'm an advocate. I am unabashedly an advocate for North St. Louis, okay? And so as you go to do these things, please, please understand, we're not begging to just be part of the county, okay? And this has to go to a vote. And if we don't feel that this process is going to be a fair process, it's going to be dead on arrival. I appreciate that you guys not get into substance things. Again, my things is look out for North St. Louis. Look out for the fact that we're not trying to be, not work with you. What we're doing is advocating for our community, and also make sure that you notice this up, because there's a lot of people watching this. And so I was sent here to say, why haven't I seen that there was going to be a meeting? And I would kind of think that probably even an organizational meeting we should have noticed up, okay? But we're going to get by long as we don't do any business. But from now on, please find a place that everybody can know what's going on. And please know that as soon as we can get a fair representation on the board, we're all in, and I will be available to interview all. If you want to talk to me, I will give you all my information. If you want to talk to me about what North St. Louis looks like, because I've represented it for a very long, since 1991. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I know that it takes a lot of time for citizens to want to participate in things, so I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Bliner, before we thank you, Alderwoman. Just as a note, and I'll have the clerk bring you the link, the meeting was noticed up Friday at 2 o'clock. It says the Board of Freeholders. You'll see it on the calendar with all of the information about today's meeting and everything. But let's allow them to move forward.
Okay, I'm just...
I know, but since it was going to be held here, and they need to organize and elect officers and assign someone to do that, we did it on there. We did it because it's a meeting that's going to be held here in this chambers. But in fairness to them, so that we can move forward, let's just allow it to be the point. the meeting, but the point is the meeting was noticed and the media and everybody was notified. Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes. So anyway, I'm Joe Vaccaro. I'm the alderman of the 23rd Ward. I lived on my block my whole life, which is 64 years, getting ready for Social Security next year. I did want to at least ask at some point if you would just stand up and let us know what part of the county you represent. I do appreciate everybody being here, I really do. And I know it's going to take a lot of time. And I did read through the rules, and trying to put something together that will actually pass on any ballot, city or county, is going to be near impossible. Because I do believe the city people believe that we're doing just fine. And I know we are. In fact, our reserves are growing. We're not, every time I see the news that we're floundering and we need the county's money, that's not even close to factual. It seems like one of the things that I probably disagree with, I know there's the stuff going on with the airport, and I'm not a fan of getting rid of it, but what I think is funny, when we were asking the county to pitch in to build the stadium that the Blues play in, the county was absolutely, positively against it. Yet, although the city made a lot of money when the Blues won the Stanley Cup, I think the county equally did very well. And I know that's not part of yours, but I thought I'd throw that in. And I would like to thank the mayor and the president of the board. They have been working back and forth to get this done. It seems to be hung up in committee, and I'm sure we'll get it done. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that these guys got a very hard task, near impossible. I guess you got a year to meet off and on, and then it's got to be publicly put out, and then it has to be an election that is 6 months away from any other election. So this process is going to be a very long process. And again, I would encourage you to think about everything you're doing, because anything radical will never pass the city or the county. I mean, that's just a fact. Some things could be combined, but I think if you start talking about trying to combine police departments, they're so different in pay and in what they get for benefits after they retire. Fire departments, fire protection districts, schools. I don't see how you could possibly change all that. Ask someone from the city police department to take a cut in their pension, or ask someone from the county departments to make less money, or you got county police that make, I guess, like $70,000, $80,000, county firemen that make that, to say, gee, well, you can come down to what the city makes. I don't think you're going to get these guys to say, gee, we'll work for $50,000. We got good officers and we got good firefighters. These are things that there's no way that I don't even see. I mean, you guys could spend the rest of your life and mine trying to figure out how to put these things together, but it'll never happen. Anything radical like that will most likely not pass either the county or the city. You're also going to be tasked with, is the county going to join the city, or are we going to become a municipality in the county? Either way, I don't see how that's going to be something, that's going to pass. So I just thought I would throw that in. I don't want to give a long speech. It went longer than I should. But what you're tasked with is going to be near impossible. I think the group's been put together one time before, and they chose to do nothing. That when they saw that the task ahead of them was just not something that's even close to possible. And that might be what you end up doing at the end of it all, saying, gee, we met and we feel there's nothing we can do to combine these things. But I just want to throw that out there. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm standing here, and at some point, if you could just let us know who you are. Some people may know all you, but I know like two. So anyway, does anyone have questions for me? Okay, well, God bless. I'll be hanging out back there, and at some point, if you could identify yourselves. Thank you.
Morning. My name is Shameen Clark Hubbard. I represent the 26th Ward in the city of St. Louis. I'm not going to hold you longer with some of the echoes of some of the sentiments that I have with my colleague from the First Ward on making sure that representation is equitable on this Freeholders Board. I think we are clear on that. What's unfortunate, you know, you can't legislate morals, so we have to depend on people and their personalities, their consciences, and their hearts that they're going to do the right thing and have a good faith effort at this process. So I'm here just in presence this morning. I'm watching, listening, learning, because I don't know if you all know, I'm probably the newest, one of my freshman classes here with me. But so I'm here, I have a level of optimism about not just this process, but about the Board of Aldermen, about the legislative process. So I'm here. Again, like my colleagues, if you have any questions for me, I can answer the questions. It's important for me that, along with my colleagues, I advocate for my community and the city as a whole. One of the things that I will note that was left out of Better Together that was important to me was the education piece, because I know how education correlates with not just the poverty levels, but just the way the community thrives and is sustainable. So if I could have an input on this, I would love to see a bigger light casted on education within this freeholder process. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you all.
Thank you, Mr. President. I almost want to say members of the board, but this is not our board. But first, I would like to thank you all for coming. I'm Tamika Hubbard. I'm the other Hubbard. That's my sister-in-law. I don't want to confuse anybody. I've been here since 2011, and I represent the 5th Ward. Just to echo some of the things that my colleague from the First said, I mean, she was very open and honest and transparent about that process and how we don't have our members facing you and being included in that process yet, because we did feel that as a body or as a Black caucus, we weren't engaged in that process. We knew we couldn't personally handpick the person, but we felt that it was not representative of North St. Louis and the type of leadership and the needs that we definitely have in our community. And we need strong voices, you know. It's kind of unfortunate sometimes people think that just because you put a Black person on the board that they're the voice for all Black people, and that's not the same. Someone can be Black and have the same experience as someone white, you know, just difference in color. So that was very important to us. I didn't sit on the committee where that decision was made, but I watched it, and I do know that we weren't properly engaged in that process. With Better Together, it was botched from start to finish, and I remember I was reading it, and before I could get 4 or 5 pages in, what struck me was they made a comment about that this would not take away representation for African Americans because we have a Black county prosecutor, and that was just the craziest thing ever, because that came in on the wave of Ferguson, which the whole world was watching. And so that type of stuff, whoever wrote that, I mean, I was like, if this is an indicator of where we may be going, we're in trouble. So I'll just say again, I just hope that you all are very inclusive in the process. I get it. We do need to streamline some things, you know, as far as being together, just from a regional perspective. I get that. But if it will take away African-American representation in a state that has a deep-rooted history of doing things that disproportionately impact African-Americans and people of color, then that's a problem. But I believe that if it's structured right, it can happen. And it's specifically, you know, you all hear us thump for North St. Louis so hard, and that's because, like, we're down here at this Board of Aldermen, and we have to work very, very, very hard to get anything done in our communities. And that Delmore divide, that's real. That's a reality. I've just been here since 2011, but I've lived in this city all my life. My family has been here for 5 generations, so we've seen it, and we know how hard we have to work. So the process is bigger than just having 1 or 2 people of color at the table. I think as a city, as a state, as a region, we need to be all-encompassing and making sure that we're doing what's in the best interest for us entirely. So that's all I have. I wish you all the best. I know it'll be a hard process. I know this will ultimately end up to the voters, but when and it does, I just hope that you all utilize every resource to engage the people in St. Louis, specifically North St. Louis, because on any election day in St. Louis, less than 20% of registered voters are coming out to vote. And even with the ballot language, you have to make sure that it's right, because people will think a yes notice, a no vote, and all that. And we've gone through that just with the reduction of the board bills that were put out there. And some of that stuff was by design. And I just hope that if and when it hits the voters, St. Louis City will be able to decide. St. Louis County will definitely be able to decide. And we won't broaden that net and get rural Missouri involved in there, because this won't really impact them. So I just hope that we do it right. If we truly are about being together, merging, doing what's in the best interest of our state, I hope that we do it right. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brett Narayan. I'm the alderman from the 24th Ward. For any who may not know the ward map, it's kind of a crazy map, but a big chunk of my ward is the Dogtown area, so right going down 40. I also serve on the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, where the mayor's nominees are right now. And I do have a lot of hope that the next time that you meet, that we will have representatives from the city meeting with you as well. Unlike some of my colleagues, I'm a bit more optimistic about this process for you guys. I think that Clerk Kennedy did a fantastic job about explaining some of the history of the city, and I don't want to go too deep into that, other than it's hard to sit in this room and not think about the history of this city. And I would encourage you to put yourself in the history when you're making the decisions moving forward. This is a historic process, and you all are a part of that. And the decisions that you make or do not make will be reflected in our city's history forever moving forward. I also had the opportunity to run a campaign just several months back, and so I knocked on close to 3,000 doors in my ward, and I talked to a lot of people. At the time, Better Together was one of the topics just kind of dominating the news cycle, and it didn't seem to my constituents like there was a huge appetite for a major merger, either the city into the county or the county into the city. So I would encourage you, looking forward, to look towards what could be more efficient for both the city and the county, what could be cost-saving for both the city and the county. And I think if you're looking towards those issues, that you can come up with something that will be looked at favorably by both constituents in the county and the city, because ultimately you do have a tricky task at hand, and that's to come up with something that's going to pass muster with county and the city. And there's been a divide there for since 1876, and so there's a lot of hurt feelings there on both sides, and so you do have a tricky task. But I would encourage you, if it feels like the task at hand is too overwhelming, remember one of the biggest successes that the Board of Freeholders had, and that's Metropolitan Sewer District. We look at our sewer district, and it's a gem of the region, and that came out of the Freeholders process. Before that, there was, the city had their own sewer district, the county theirs, and when they merged, it became a much more efficient process that ultimately ended up doing a lot of good for both the city and the county. As my colleague Shamim Hubbard said, I would encourage you also to look towards schools. What happens in the city affects the county, and what happens in the county affects the city. There's no escaping that. Neither the city or the county is an island. And so if we look towards the future, education is what is going to fix some of the problems in the city and in the county. And if we can look towards education and look towards making our children have a better future, the region will be better for it. And with that, I wish you the best of luck. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, you want a sounding board on anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd be happy to discuss anything with you as a group, one-on-one, meet up anytime. However you'd like to do it, I'd be happy to discuss any concerns you may have moving forward. And thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the microphone being at the correct height. I appreciate that my tall colleague over here, Dan, always raises it too high. So, hi, I'm Annie Rice. I'm the 8th Ward Alderwoman. Also, just want to echo thank you so much for being here. This process is people-driven. You are here because you represent so many different areas and expertises, and your area of knowledge, your body of knowledge together is immense, and that is what this process is supposed to reflect. And hopefully we will get our city counterparts to join you as quickly as possible. But as we go forward and we think about, why this process was even brought about, the Board of Freeholders is normally given a specific task, right? When MSD was created, it was a specific. The people were consulted, were asked to sign a petition to create this thing. You have a very open-ended task ahead of you. It could be anything. It could be nothing. And so I think there's an incredible challenge there that might be overwhelming, that we're a region with immense challenges and immense possibilities as well. So to try to narrow those things down, I would encourage you to do a whole lot less of this, listening to us, and going out and actually listening to the people. You have unlimited power to be able to hold public meetings, to do public engagement, to survey people, you can spend money and we send us the bill. So I know that that's not popular in government to say that, this is at the cost of the taxpayers, but this is important. And one of the greatest successes, I think, in recent memory is the Ferguson Commission, right? The Ferguson Commission came out, they held public meeting after public meeting, they took a beating, right? So sometimes you need to have loud and rowdy meetings where people are yelling and they are getting their feelings out, because there's a lot pent up in our region and people want to be heard. So the more you can get out and speak with people directly, business owners are great, but also the people on the street, right? The people who are living on our streets, they deserve to be heard. The CEOs of major corporations are invested in our region, but also our school teachers, our children that are coming through. Please do not neglect our children as we go through this process. That's another piece that is incredibly important. And as we're I think one of the criticisms that came out of both of the Board of Freeholders nominees that were put forward was that, no offense to all, you're a little bit on the older end. And it's something that, I'm the 4th youngest down here on the board. And we have a good number of younger folks in our 30s down here. And the future, you are working on the future of the region. And so the more you can intentionally get out and talk to the young people, talk to the 16-year-olds, talk to the 17-year-olds. They're going to be voting very soon. Some of them may be voting by the end of the year when this comes in front of them. They want to know that you care about what they want for their future, not just what we're telling them that they want, right? If we've got an opportunity to move forward in a big way, let's include all of those kids. And as we look towards education, I know that you are bound by the Constitution. There is only so much that we can touch. But please do work work as far to the edge of your boundaries as you can, right? You have the ability to supersede statute, just not the Constitution. And that's huge. And if this really is a people-driven process, if you are out there listening to the people and this becomes a people movement, we can go places with that, right? So I just want to thank you so much for your service. This is a huge task. It's not going to be easy, and you're going to get a lot of blowback from a lot of different areas. But thank you for committing your time. Thank you for committing to listening. Thank you for bringing what you have to the table. And like my colleagues, available to be a part of the process as much as possible, but hopefully our representatives will join you soon. And any way that I can get my constituents involved, get the people of the city involved, we really want to do that. So let us know how we can help facilitate those conversations as well. Thank you.
Alderman Todd, could you move out here somewhere so that they can see you better?
Good morning. My name is Jesse Todd. I'm the alderman for the 18th Ward. My concern is that the city has fair representation. That's the number one thing that I've heard this echoed before, that not only, we're not talking about the color of a person's skin, we're talking about where people live is important. Not only where they live is important, but we need a diversity of opinions. Many times people tend to pick people who had similar opinions, and that and also diversity of economics. We do have poor people, and most of the people are poor. Many of the people in North St. Louis are poor. So we need to look at the class of where the person comes from, because many middle class blacks who haven't had experience in being poor don't understand, most of them don't understand blacks too. So it's not just the color, it's not just where you live, it's also some of the experiences that you've experienced. And I can say for myself, I don't need to go into it, but I've had very diverse experience in many areas. The other thing is that we need to make sure that we have an earnings tax. For example, if we talk about merging, we need to make sure that we do not take our resources in the city are scarce, and we do, unless it enhances the resources that we have in the city to provide the services for our constituents. I think we should take that into consideration, because due to our tax base being lower, due to our problems being greater, which our major problem is poverty. And let me repeat that, poverty. When we hear about all these killings, this is an element of the black community, the poor people. We're talking about poor black people who are doing this killing, and this is due to poverty. And it's, and a symptom of that is a lack of drug treatment. So when we're talking about merging, we need to take all of these problems from the bottom up, merge, and if we're talking about coming together, we need to deal with them. And I'm not talking about putting people in prison, which costs Justice Center right now talking about $30,000 to keep a person in a state penitentiary. We're talking about up to $50,000, which we could reduce crime if we for $10,000 and save taxpayers' money and save lives. So I hope when we look at it from the bottom up, making our community truly safe. Not talking about bringing more police officers in to solve the problem. These problems are not police problems. These are economic problems due to technology. First, it was automation that drove African Americans to the city when the cotton pickers and the tractors took over the land. Because at one time we were not killing each other. So once the technology took over, automation took over, and technology is taking over now, robots taking jobs. So we're talking about social problems. And when we talk about merging, I hope we're not talking about let's just come together and sing Kumbaya. I hope we merge, come together, and deal with these human problems, because if we don't deal with them, it's useless. It's a waste of time and a waste of lives. It's a waste of taxpayers' money when we have the state, the city, county, and state prisons paying up to $50,000 to keep a person people in there, especially African Americans, who was charged with crack cocaine. And then in some other states, we need to speak on that. People in your position need to speak on that. It is your responsibility. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's my responsibility as the elected official. It's all our responsibility as people who represent people in a position to speak truth to power, to speak it, tell the truth. The truth is marijuana is a good example where it's legal in many states. Then at the same time, it's illegal on a federal level. But then we got many people, African Americans especially, that are rotting in prison right now, away from their families. And we talking about why these kids and young people killing each other. What did they do? They took the money out of the community. I know because I was part of the anti-poverty program. Billions of dollars were taken out. And then what happened was that they replaced that money with crack cocaine. The government, the city government, the state government, the federal government, and then locked up all these parents after taking the money out. Then what are the people supposed to do? And then they tell people at the state level and the city and federal level that you cannot get a job. Sometimes after you commit a crime, you can't get a job, you can't get a license to go into business. And let me summarize. And then they go into the drug business, which is a hazardous business. So what we need to do when we talk about merging, we don't need to talk about whether we're going to merge forestry or some little. We need to talk about the real solutions that's going to make our community safer, that's going to make our whole region safer, that are going to save true lives. And that's what we need to be. That's what we need to deal with. And again, we need to make sure that these people come from a diverse background, not only because of the color of their skin, but also because, and not only their location, but because of the class they come from. Because again, I'm middle class, I didn't come from the middle class, but we need people who actually can speak to the needs of that group, like the people out there who are right now, right across the street, sleeping outside. We need them inside. And those who are, and other people who are not from, who don't have the same privileges that many of us have. So again, wish you success, but I hope we go into more in-depth problems than just the surface. And then I think whether it passes or not, sometimes is not the issue. I hope, but what's important is that we educate people and tell the truth about how to solve some of these problems that we have.
Well, I think the first order of business we have is to elect an interim chair for the purposes of this meeting. So,
Dee, you're sitting in the middle. Would you like to, for this meeting? You seem to have the front and center.
This is for this meeting.
For this meeting only. That's all. That's all. Just so we can get through the agenda and adjourn and take motions and whatnot.
I would second that.
Is that acceptable to the rest of the board?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, we have been asked to introduce ourselves and tell what part of the county we're from, so maybe that would be a good next thing for us to do. And could we start down at the end, Cheryl, with
Okay.
hi?
Gee, thanks. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what you want me to share, so I'll just share what I think is important. My name is Cheryl Milton Roberts. I'm not originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I'm the daughter of a veteran and the granddaughter of a veteran, and so I had the benefit of being able to travel around. Oh, what should I do? Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. My name is Cheryl Milton Roberts. I'm not from St. Louis, Missouri. Originally, I've been here since I graduated from the University of Missouri-Columbia. My father was a veteran, so I got an opportunity to travel the world and live in Germany and different places. So I have kind of a different perspective than many on lots of things. I moved here, as I said, as a graduate of the University of Missouri-Columbia and started work with the May Department Stores Company, which is no longer here, in their executive training program, and have worked in different capacities for other large corporations within the St. Louis metropolitan region. I'm the mother of 2 daughters. I have a daughter who is a recent graduate of George Washington University, and I have a daughter who is a junior at Yale, and everything that I do and all the work that I've done that is not my paid work, if you will, has been really around giving back to the community and about focusing on the children, because, you know, I think it was very valid what Ms. Rice shared, and that is, we're not doing this for us, because when we get all this in place, if whatever it is, we won't be here, okay? So it is very important that we hear the voices of the young people. It's very important that we understand what their concerns and things are. And so even, you know, when we did our initial discussions with Dr. Page, that was something that I shared with him. The other thing that's very important to me, and so what I do professionally as well as what I do when I'm not at work, is that I spend a lot of time working in organizational development and social justice spaces. I think it's very important for everybody to be included and everybody to be heard. And I don't just mean black and white, I mean male, female, and et cetera, the whole, you know, spectrum of diversities that we have out there. And I think that in our region, we have had a little bit of a challenge with that. So hopefully all of us working together, we can make sure that everybody's heard and that we can explore some areas that may be uncomfortable for some, but that are necessary, you know, to be explored. And hopefully put some suggestions on the table that may be of value to the community as a whole.
Very much, Cheryl. And just to remind all of us that this is being recorded and live streamed, and so it's really important that we speak to the microphone. I thought my voice might carry to that one, but so that's why we're really concerned to make sure that everybody's able to hear and that everything gets caught on tape. Okay, Katie?
Cheryl, that's a very impressive act to follow. My name is Katie Ferrand, and I am from South County. I was born and raised in South County. I currently live in Sunset Hills. My experience is primarily my day job, if you will, is real estate in various forms. I do have some government experience. I worked in the office of Governor Matt Blunt. I was based in his St. Louis office at the Wainwright Building. I was director of outreach for 3.5 years. I also interned in college for State Senator Anita Yeckel, who's no longer, actually today would be her birthday. I don't know if some of you, Anita worked a lot with the city, and she was a very good mentor to me. I have a master's in legal studies from Washington University School of Law and a bachelor's in finance from Fontbonne. My pride and joy the last 9 years has been serving on the board of the Lee May Child and Family Center. We are located obviously in Lee May. We serve a very diverse population, primarily in the Hancock, Bayless, Afton school districts, and a little bit of South St. Louis as well. Lower income, accredited, licensed early childhood education, and the support services that come with that. We do a lot for the families. 10% of our students are in protective services. So we have a lot of trauma that our kids go through. And in fact, we are a trauma smart facility. So we try to work not only with the children, but also the staff and the families, and to deal with what they have witnessed in their lives and how to, move forward from it, but to heal from it. And so that has been really a focus. I do not have children, but I have I had a very blessed childhood, and to see that these kids are in poverty, homelessness, drugs, and this is in South County, that I know that it's obviously not just localized there. And anything that we can do for the youngest, like you said, so many have said, the poverty and education, that's where we should start. And so that is hopefully my focus, to shed some light on that and to see what we can do to help the youngest generation move forward, move up, be better, get the education, get the support they need. And I hope this process can focus on that. And I just want to thank all the Alder people for being here, and it was great listening. This was a very good start to this process and very informative. And I look forward to working with you and learning more about your wards. And yes, thank you for having us.
Joe?
Thank you. All right, thank you. So my name is Joe Blanner. I'm the governor's appointee, so I'm neither a resident of the city or the county. I actually live in unincorporated Jefferson County, very close to Eureka, which is in St. Louis County. I believe one of the reasons for my appointment was that I've actually spent about the last 4 years studying the history of the separation of the city and the county and all of the freeholder processes, starting with the one that happened in 1926, all the way up to the most recent effort in the early 1990s. So I hope that I bring a historical perspective from the research that I've done. I'm also a practicing lawyer. I work for a law firm in Town and Country called McCarthy, Leonard & Kamer. I'm a principal there. One of my primary practice areas is municipal law. I have a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's degree in public administration. I've spent a lot of my career working with local governments. So not only do I bring a historical perspective, but I also think I bring the legal perspective. And in addition to that, I care very deeply about this region. And so even though I live in Jefferson County, I realize that what happens in the city, what happens in the county has a profound impact on the entire region, inclusive of the outlying counties. And I care about the future of my own 4 children, and I hope that they can stay here and be prosperous along with all of your children. And I don't believe that that's going to happen if we don't move forward. And so it's my hope that this process will be successful. I realize that there are prior efforts. I think that historical perspective has to influence the decisions that we make as a board. One of the things I want to point out as we move forward is everybody keeps using the term freeholder. The actual correct term is elector. In the late 1980s, there was a Board of Freeholders that was constituted, and they were advancing something that has come to be known as the McNary Plan, and that board's efforts were ultimately struck down by the United States Supreme Court, and the court decided that the freeholder requirement, which is a property ownership requirement, was not a proper requirement. And then the Missouri Supreme Court came back and said that didn't invalidate the constitutional provision that the actual term is elector. So hopefully as we go forward, we can call ourselves electors, because that's actually what we are, not freeholders. And colloquially, people keep telling me that we're freeloaders, and I don't want to be referred to a freeloader. I also, just as a quick little aside, I work in the county now. I have worked in the city, and I've even worked for the city. When I was a college student and a law student, I had the privilege of working for Slate in the Summer Youth Employment Training Program, and that was a great blessing to me. I learned a lot and really appreciated the opportunity. So I think I bring a couple different perspectives that I hope will be helpful to this board as we move forward. So thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Manavani. Thank you so much for your comments to the alderpersons. I have pages of notes already. I will do my best to remember the counsel that you guys have given, and we'll try to consult back as we engage in this process. With respect to my perspective on being a member of the Board of Electors, it is my personal feeling that we here are all neighbors and friends and not enemies. I come here with that in my heart, that I hope to serve the region. My neighborhood, my street is not my priority. I understand those who have strong commitments to the representatives that they're serving, especially those who are elected officials. That, frankly, is not my primary objective here. I have been concerned for many years about the trajectory of our overall region, and I have felt that the disaffiliation and the division across our community on the basis of a number of factors regional or locality in which we live, race, and whatnot holds us back tremendously. And so I very much welcome the opportunity to try to help the region think deeply about how we can improve our structure so that people are not left behind as they are today, and that the region is not left behind as it is being, in my view, today. Personally, with respect to my background, it's probably kind of out there. I mean, some people have perhaps heard my story before, but for the people who were under a rock, so I was born in the city, raised in Afton. I have lived in different communities across St. Louis County. I've lived in Afton and Sunset Hills and Glendale, and now we, for the last 10 years, have lived in Ladue. I have worked in the city of St. Louis on numerous occasions. I relocated my business to the city of St. Louis, which, to the consternation of some county folks, as a practical matter. I have worked in Clayton and De Pere and Chesterfield and near South Side and whatnot. I've never really gotten this division, frankly, between city and county. I don't describe myself when I get on an airplane as somebody other than somebody who lives in St. Louis. I feel a brotherhood to people who live in the city as I do people in the county. If that makes me somehow not an effective representative, I apologize, but that's just the way I look at the world. So, lawyer, master's in finance. Most importantly, I have 3 children and soon 10 grandchildren, all who live in this region. Consequently, the future of the region is crucial to me, and I welcome the opportunity to serve. I had occasion, I'll shut up here in a second, but I had occasion last night. Somebody gave me a book of speeches, great speeches of all time, and I was reading Lincoln's first inaugural address, and he said to the people gathered there that he didn't have the power to divide the Union. Only the people had the power to do that. And I think it's important that we on this board remember that ultimately we don't have the power to do anything. We can make proposals. It's only the people that are going to have the power to do whatever we might offer, And secondly, I just want to reiterate, as he said, that we come here not as enemies but as friends. I hope that we're able to take a spirit like that to all of the efforts that are going to be engaged here. We've all had different experiences. We all have been born to this or that and whatnot. And the accidents of birth should never, I don't think, be held to create animosity, so long as people are willing to listen and converse and are open-minded. And I think that's ultimately our core responsibility. So thank you all for your time today.
Thanks, Mark. Well, I'm Dee Joyner, and I'm your temporary chairman for today only. And thank you for the opportunity to play this role, and thank you to all of you from the Board of Aldermen who are willing to come and share your thoughts with us today. I'll tell you a little bit about my background in just a minute, but I want to start by saying that I truly believe for us to do the job that we've been asked to do, listening is going to be absolutely critical. And that we would be well served in the early days of our time together once we get our city electors to join us, that we spend a lot of the first part of our work listening before we start coming to any conclusions about proposals that may or may not get put forward. And I also agree very much that it's important that we get around the city and the county to hold those listening sessions and those meetings so that we go to the people. My background is that I spent the first part of my career working in local government, primarily. I worked for East West Gateway Coordinating Council in the early years, but then most of my government career was with St. Louis County government. And I will share with you that, yes, it is true, I was the county liaison to the ill-fated Board of then Freeholders that unfortunately worked very, very, very hard and were not able to see their plan presented to the voters because of the technicality from the Constitution. So I am so, so hopeful that that doesn't happen now, because I think where we are right now in the city and the county is a real opportunity to listen, to see what we might do that could really help move us forward and that would be acceptable to the voters in the city and the county. After my work in county government, I spent the next career for almost 30 years working for Commerce Bank, most recently in talent development and community relations and charitable contributions. So volunteering in the community has always been an important part of my life, and as a result, I've been involved on a number of boards and worked on a number of different kinds of projects. I am one of those, Alderwoman Rice, at the other end of the spectrum, if you will. And so I retired from Commerce Bank a few years ago, and now I work part-time for the Adrian Dominican Sisters as their director of their Office of Resilient Communities, which is a fascinating project. I won't take the time to tell you all about it now, but if any of you are interested, really working with the sisters to facilitate a process to understand the needs of those in the margins in the communities where they historically have served, and give them an opportunity to invest in, empower, and give back as the number of sisters are dwindling in the ministries that they have in those communities. So it's just a fascinating opportunity, an opportunity to engage with the citizens in terms of needs. So with that, I will pass the mic to Alex.
Thank you, Dee. And good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to agree with everything that's been said so far on, with our board about intentions on serving. I think you know, it's incumbent upon all of us to bring our best efforts forward with this group to make it better for the entire community. So with that, let me give you a very brief bio. So my mother and father met in St. Louis to start their family. My father's Mexican-American from Texas and spoke English as a second language, and my mother is Irish-English from Central Illinois and is a nurse and has been a nurse for many, many years. So which partially influenced, I guess, my career choice. So I grew up in Maryland Heights, but moved to Kansas City after graduating high school and did my degree there. And a couple of things I did there that I think influence who I am. I was a paramedic there for a couple of years. And so if you're familiar with the city of Kansas City, it's a very large city. It's one of the largest cities in the country. And so after working as a paramedic, I went to medical school at MU. And then went back to Kansas City to do my residency in emergency medicine. So I've traditionally have worked in inner city publicly funded hospitals, because I truly believe that was my calling. So I did that for a number of years until I was called to active duty with the military. So I'm 20 years in the reserves. I'm a colonel in the U.S. Army Reserves. And what may or may not be appropriate to the position that I'm holding now is I led a civil affairs team, which, if you know the military, it's the rebuilding and working with host nations to rebuild societies. And so that's what I did for a year, was rebuild part of the healthcare sector in the middle part of Iraq. So you could say that was good training for what I'm doing now. But came back, lived in Albuquerque for a while, which was another interesting place, and then moved to D.C., where I did emergency medicine and was also the chief medical officer for the Department of Homeland Security. So I come from the 5th District in the county, and so that's where I currently live. I chose to move back to St. Louis with my family after our stint in D.C. Because I love St. Louis, I truly do. Currently, I'm the chief medical officer for SSM Health, which many of you know has 8 hospitals here in the St. Louis metropolitan area, but we also serve 3 other states, Southern Illinois and Mid-Missouri. And so I thoroughly enjoy doing that. I've also been a professor in public health for a number of years as well. I've truly enjoyed hearing all of the passion that's been in the room, and it's evident from what I'm hearing that everybody truly wants the best for the metropolitan area. And I'll leave it with something that we discuss at SSM Health, which I think reflects on my personal nature, which is servant leadership. I do believe that everything I've done in my life has been to serve other people, and that's what I'm here to do for this board as well. So thank you.
I got one. I've got a microphone. Thank you. Thank you. Morning, everyone. My name is Fred Searcy Jr. First off, I want to say thank you, Alderman, for inviting me back on the floor. I also like to say thank you, President Reed and Mayor Cruson. I'm a 64-year-old North County resident. I live in unincorporated North County, the only one in the unincorporated area that has been chosen to be a member of the Board of Electors. I just want to start off to say that I've been a lifelong resident of the St. Louis area. I was born and raised in St. Louis City. My grandmother and them have lived, well, they're deceased at this time, but they were one of the first black families to move on their block, and we still own that home. So that was about 70 years ago. My brother lives in Alderwoman Tyus' ward. I have my mother lives in Alderman Moore's ward. I have a daughter that has a business in the 19th ward, which is Alderwoman Davis. So I am tied to the city of St. Louis. I lived in the city of St. Louis for 30 plus years before my boss, my wife, made me move to the county. So I have feelings for the city and the county. I know you guys are in the process of electing your electors, and I've spoken with some of you, and I've told you that I will look out for the city and the county because I believe that we're just one region. Even though it's county and city, we're one region. When you go out of town, which a lot of our electors up here, when they travel, I'm sure when they speak to their colleagues or something, it's always St. Louis. It's not St. Louis City, it's not St. Louis County. So that's something that we may have to get away from. Excuse me, I currently work for the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 562. I'm the Director of Minority Recruitment. I've been in that position 3 years. I've been a pipe fitter for over 40 years. I also had a chance to work for the city of St. Louis for a short while. My dad is a retired police officer, lieutenant from the city of St. Louis. I know Ms. Tyus very well. I know her husband even better. We went to grade school, even though he was a couple of years ahead of me. So I've listened to everything that you guys have stood up and stated before us, and I understand what you're talking about. Because when I grew up in my younger days, I know what Ms. Tyus was talking about. In the area where we lived at, it was doctors, it was newspaper owners, it was businessmen, it was policemen. And as she said, they all migrated to Lindell. But it was a strong area, the St. Louis City, the north part of St. Louis City. When I grew up, you could walk anywhere in the city without worrying about being hassled. That's something I would like to see again, because even though it's a city problem, it's starting to move out into the county. No matter where you live at in the county, you are not protected by it. I mean, you can live in West County, you can live in Frontenac, any of those enclaves. Crime will find you. So if we don't address crime, that'll be one of our biggest issues. Another thing, Annie, I heard you about addressing the kids. That's some of the things I do when I go out and recruit. I just don't go recruit high schoolers or adults. I like to go into the middle schools, because if we catch them at the middle schools, maybe we can steer them away from crime. I'm also a Navy veteran, Dr. Garza, thank you for your service. Thank you. I was in the Navy for 4 years, and it was something, it made me grow up. I went there after high school, so I was able to travel. I was able to do things that maybe I couldn't do if I didn't take that route. That's some of the things that I tell kids when I go out and meet them. I'm a little different. I believe that when we start this process, that we should be out in the public, all over the city and county. I believe we should start in the north part of the area, not even North City, but the north part of the area, because the people in the northern part of the city and county believe they are forgotten. And so we have to show them that you mean just as much to us as a person that lives in a well-to-do area, Ladue, Chesterfield, or Frontenac. And if we don't bring that, no matter what we bring to the people, it's going to fail. It's going to fail. You notice I haven't said I went to this school or that school. I'm just a high school graduate. But I listen to people. That is one of my strong points, is just to listen. I don't like to talk a lot. I'm private. I'm a private person. This is too much for me right here. You know, I don't like all this. But I am a proud grandfather of 12. I have 4 daughters, and I have 7 great-grandkids. So whatever we do, I'm doing this for my family and for everyone else's family. So thank you very much. And I know I have to be back in the gallery. It's Friday. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Fred. John.
Well, after listening to Mr. Searcy, I don't think I'm going to say anything this morning that's going to be nearly as memorable. My name is John Nations. I am a lifelong resident of the St. Louis region. I often get asked if I've spent my entire life in St. Louis. My answer generally is not yet. As we get going, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to extend my appreciation, and I think the appreciation of everyone, for the hospitality of President Reed and all the members of the Board of Aldermen. And a lot of people will say, well, the Constitution requires you to meet here. The Constitution may require us to meet here, but it doesn't require the hospitality that we've been shown this morning, and we appreciate it, and the time that you've invested to get us better educated about what's on your minds. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the St. Louis County Municipal League, which are represented over here by Executive Director Pat Kelly. In fact, the reason we're here this morning is because of the Metropolitan Municipal League. It is a great organization. I had the tremendous benefit of serving as president of it more years ago than I care to remember. I am a lifelong resident of the region. I have lived in the county my entire life. Started out in Webster Groves, moved to Shrewsbury University City, and I have lived in Chesterfield for the last 27 years. But I am a third straight generation member of my family to be committed to public service. My grandfather was very involved in public service here in the city, my dad very much so in St. Louis County, and me all over the region. Of the 25 years I've spent in public life, probably the 2 most notable roles are I was mayor of the city of Chesterfield for a decade, and then I was president and CEO of Bi-State Development for more than 8 years, which set a record in that position, and I can explain why. No, just kidding. But what it's given me the opportunity to do, which makes me very excited to serve on the Board of Freeholders, is I have had the opportunity to do like many of the things that have been expressed today. I have stood in just about every ward in the city of St. Louis at one time or another and all across this region, listening to people for a very long time. I have stood and listened to people in just about every municipality throughout the county, and I have stood in the regions all up and down the east side. I think we have a historic opportunity. I am mindful of the fact, as I sit here this morning, that we have a historic opportunity, and there's a lot of history that goes with it. This is an effort that has been tried multiple times in years gone by. And often the result of it has not matched the great hopes with which the efforts were launched. We hope, I think all of us, and those to be named to the panel, that this time we can really improve our region in a lot of ways. As I say, many efforts have been tried, and now it's time to really make some progress. I am confident that we can do so. I think that St. Louis, and a lot of you maybe have heard me say this and maybe some of you have not, I think St. Louis stands on the brink of a threshold of what could be a very dazzling future. I have spoken all over this region. I have spoken all over this country. I have worked with people throughout the region and all over the Midwest who look at St. Louis as the opportunity of a lifetime. The question is, here in St. Louis, can we get our organizations and our people together to seize the opportunities that await us? As we look to the future of St. Louis, it is one of the most resilient places in the United States. I would dare anyone to find a place that has been more resilient than our community. The people who carved their existence out of the wilderness 300 years ago to become one of the great cities of its time, to transform itself into an industrial society time and time again. St. Louis has found the leadership, the will, the resilience to transform itself to make it successful, and frankly, I'm confident we can do so again. And I think a lot of that will be reflected in this process. Just in our lifetimes, we have seen St. Louis be reborn. In the 40s, St. Louis was referred to as first in booze, first in shoes, and last in the American League. Then we shipped the Browns off to Baltimore, where they've continued their winning ways. Then we transformed into an economy that was manufacturing and aerospace. Now we're an economy that talks about financial service sector, tech sectors, manufacturing, all kinds of things that open up opportunities and should open up opportunities for every person all across our region. So I look forward to the meetings that we're about to have, the input of our community, the opportunities that await us. And frankly, I look forward to, hopefully, with this group, making a tremendous contribution to improve our region and create a brighter future, not just for people in the city, and not just for people in the county, but for people all over our region. That's my hope.
Thanks, John. Carol.
Hi, my name is Carol Stroker. I am a resident of the city of Hazelwood. I grew up in the city of St. Louis, but I 52 years in Hazelwood. I am a member of North County. Very defensive of North County. I love my community and I look after it all the time. I was elected to the city of Hazelwood in 1992. And I went from here to there. I was elected to the Missouri House of Representatives. I was a state rep, 78th district. And then I went from there to the school, represented Hazelwood School District, which is very dear to my heart. I love those little kids. And I think the purpose of me being here today is to listen. I want to listen and I want to learn what all the people in this community, in this region has to tell me. So you can see, I grew up in the city, I love it. I'm a North County person, I'm defensive, and I care, and I plan to listen. So I think that's about all I have to tell you. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be a part of this.
Thanks, Carol. And Jason.
How you doing? My name is Jason Wilson. I want to say thank you to the board president, President Reed, to the aldermen as well, alderpersons, for making your awesome commentaries. I was definitely listening, and I look forward to working with you all and you all advocating and us working together. To the Municipal League as well, thank you all for putting this together, and Mayor Lana Cruzen as well. I want to also say, Joseph Bloomer, I appreciate your research there about the term freeholder. When I was looking it up, because that was my first time really ever hearing that terminology, it seemed antiquated, and it is. Hence, that's why they changed it to the word elector. So I appreciate that you shedding that information on us. I grew up in St. Louis, all around St. Louis. I was born in the county, of course, but I had a house in the city recently. I lived in the city as a resident. Currently, I'm a father of two boys, Jason and Julian. I'm a business owner. I own Northwest Coffee Roasting Company. I'm on the Clayton School Board. I'm the first African American appointed or elected to the school board in Clayton. And I don't say that as a badge of honor, but I say that more so just about the times and where we are today. And I'll shed light on that more as we talk later. I'm a WashU MBA graduate. I want to say that I believe in St. Louis. I'm a fierce advocate of the region of St. Louis, and in particular North St. Louis. I opened up a while ago a coffee shop called Chronicle Coffee at Page and Grand, and what people used to call it the projects in Blue Mire, but it's called public housing. And my goal at that time was to spark economic, just spark an economic investment into that community, and to add value to St. Louis, because I got tired of everyone talking about St. Louis being this wretched place, downtrodden place, and so what I wanted to do was control the narrative, and it failed. But the effort and the energy is still there, and I learned a lot from that experience. And I hope that going forward, we can all work together to make this city an amazing place. It has a lot of potential. I have a lot to say, but it has a lot of potential, and I just think if we all can just sit together and come up with some long-term solutions and look to get a return on our investment, not just patchwork solutions to cover up a few things, but more like long-term solutions so that we can get a true return on investment. We can be an innovative city, a competitive city, and an example for every other city in the United States, because no other city has really taken it to the next level of trying to rid the issues that are plaguing our city, like the anti-blackness or whatever the case may be, that's really affecting the divide in our city. So I want to say thank you all for this opportunity, and I look forward to working together with this team. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jason. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you electors for your willingness to share a bit of background about yourself and what your feelings are about this process, because I really do think that is an important way for us to get started, and that we're going to need to do this again, hopefully very soon when our city electors join us. There's a saying that relationships move at the speed of trust, and I think the corollary is trust moves at the speed of relationships. And the more we can spend time as we get started getting to know each other and trusting each other, the more we're going to be able to move through this process, because it is going to be a difficult one, and we know there's going to be a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ideas, and that we need to start by listening. So I think all of us agreed that we really don't want to take any actions today until our city colleagues join us, and or really discuss anything much more of import this morning. But let me ask if any of the electors have anything else that you want to say or think that we need to talk about while we're together right now. John?
I have one thing, the agenda, but given the comments this morning, addressing the process of how we would post our meetings and when they were going to be, I hear some strong concerns about that. I don't know what the process is, but saying when our next meeting will be, and maybe we don't know, but how we'll go about posting the meetings, I think sounds like something we should address.
Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Clearly, we can't set another meeting until we know when our city electors are confirmed, but we will have to take responsibility for making sure that the notice gets posted in City Hall, in the County Council chambers, and anywhere else. And I'm not sure exactly what that process needs to be, but I'm sure we have someone on the board who might be able to help us. Joe.
Sure, I would have an opinion on that. I think we could hold another interim meeting, but I think based upon my research, I think that the first official meeting should take place on the second Monday after all of the appointments are made. So it would probably be a good idea if we were going to have another interim meeting to post notice just to make sure we're in compliance with the Sunshine Law. But if it looks like the city appointments are imminent, maybe it makes sense to just wait and have that next meeting be the second Monday after the city appointments are made, and then we can actually conduct business and elect a chair and, you know, formulate committees and take whatever action we deem necessary as a group.
Okay, is that all right with everybody to handle it that way? Okay, thank you, Joe. And I'm not, I hopefully the city electors is maybe imminent, the confirmation of them. If it goes on much longer, we can reconsider another interim meeting, but I just hate to have us do too much more talking without them with us. Okay, anything else that anybody has for the good of the order this morning?
We need to take a formal roll call.
We don't need to take a roll call, but what we need to do is take a formal vote to adjourn when we're ready to adjourn, and then we need to record that. So,
Yeah, I had one
We do
thing.
need-
I'm
okay.
Cheryl Milton Roberts again, and I realized after my turn went on that I didn't state where I live. And I want to make sure that I do that because I want to make sure they know that I'm here and I'm speaking for them. I too have spent time in the city of St. Louis, both working and living in the Central West End. I live in what now I guess is officially called Mid-County, which is a fancy name for North County. So I live in the UMSL area and have lived in that area for a great deal of time. Greendale, Norwood Court, and now I live in Belle Reve Acres, so I represent that whole Normandy area. And one of the other things that I will say is I think I shared that I have 2 daughters. I have also an extended family that lives in the city of St. Louis in the O'Fallon Park area. And so very much, you know, when I'm thinking of things, I'm not just thinking of one area, but thinking of the, you know, the region as a whole. So I think that that's very important, and I think that someone else shared this, and so I will reiterate it. It's really important that everybody's voices, you know, that everybody's voice is heard, and that the people of color in the region, who are a formidable group, that they most definitely are represented in whatever it is. And I think there's some work that we as a group need to do so that we can make sure that we are taking in and using the learnings from the Ferguson report and the Ferguson Commission and so on, because work has already been done, and be very fortuitous of us to ignore that work and then to go on and do something else, okay, when a lot of time and effort has been put into that. And I just want to make sure I said that.
great. Thank you very much, Cheryl. All right, anything else for the good of the order? What we are going to do is I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn in a second, and then we're going to actually do a roll call vote so that we can memorialize who was here for the purpose of the official record, if that's okay with everybody. So is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Joseph Blanner.
Yes.
Katie Foran. Yes. Alex Garza. Yes. Dee Joyner, yes. Mark Bonavanti.
Yes.
Cheryl Milton Roberts. Yes. John Nations.
Yes.
Fred Searcy. Yes. Carol Stroker.
Yes.
And Jason Wilson.
Yes.
It is a unanimous vote. We are adjourned. Thank you all again very much for your hosting us today.